Okay, let's dive into a pretty intense argument that's been making the rounds. One that basically calls the UK's 2025 budget an economic time bomb. The source we're looking at today makes a really stark prediction that a specific set of policies could, and I'm quoting here, destroy the UK economy. So, what's the logic behind a claim that dramatic? Let's break it down.
First, we're going to start with the core argument, the one big principle this whole thing rests on. Then, we'll look at the two specific policy levers the source says are being pulled. From there, we'll trace the downward spiral they predict, and finally, we'll see who this analysis says will ultimately be left holding the bag.
So what is this core argument? Well, according to this analysis, the whole case, the entire thing, boils down to one fundamental idea. And they're really clear on this. It's not presented as a moral or political statement, but as a simple, cold, hard piece of math.
And this is it right here. Work needs to pay more than not working. This single sentence is the lens for everything else we're about to talk about. It is the absolute foundation upon which this entire critique of the budget is built.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, the source zeroes in on two specific government policies that it claims are creating this kind of two-sided pressure, squeezing that core mathematical principle from both ends. The first lever is what the source calls a stealth tax. And here's how it works. The government freezes income tax thresholds, but at the same time, wages are rising with inflation. So what happens? Well, more and more people get pulled into higher tax brackets without the tax rates ever officially changing. The bottom line is, your take-home pay shrinks, and the financial reward for working gets just a little bit smaller. So that illustrates the first part of the pressure, right? The squeeze on work. But at the very same time, the source points to a second policy, removing the two-child benefit cap. Now, that cap used to limit certain benefits to a family's first two kids. By getting rid of it, financial support for larger non-working households goes up. So you see what they're describing. It's like a pincer movement. One policy makes working less rewarding, while another makes not working more financially stable.
And this brings us to the absolute core of the prediction, a chain of economic consequences that, it claims, will start to spiral downwards, just feeding on itself.
Now, before we look at that spiral, the source makes a really crucial distinction. It argues this isn't a judgment on people's character or calling anyone lazy. It's a prediction based on the raw power of incentives. The core idea is simple. If you change the financial landscape, people's behavior will follow, just as naturally as water flows downhill. This hypothetical table makes the argument really concrete. Just follow the numbers down to that bottom row, the net financial position. In this particular scenario, the non-working family ends up with a higher net income than the full-time worker. And according to the source, this is the exact point where not working can become a perfectly rational financial choice.
So what happens when enough people start making that rational choice? Well, the source argues it sets off a predictable domino effect that ripples through the entire economy.
And here are those dominoes lined up just as the source predicts. It starts with step 1. The labor supply drops because work is less incentivized. That leads directly to step 2. Tax revenues fall. Fewer workers means less income to tax, right? But at the same time, you hit step 3. Government spending explodes as more people claim benefits. This widening gap leads to step 4, rising debt and inflation. And the final domino? Step 5. Businesses can't survive. They falter or leave. The source argues this isn't just a temporary dip, it's a potential structural collapse.
So if that spiral does take hold, who does the source claim bears the ultimate burden? Who ends up paying the price for this economic decline?
The argument concludes that the burden falls on the most productive parts of society. We're talking about working families facing higher taxes, small businesses struggling to hire, and young people just trying to build a future. And, ironically, the final group to pay the price is anyone who relies on the very public services that a shrinking tax base can no longer support.
And this final quote really drives the point home. The key phrase is structurally toxic. The source isn't just criticizing how much money is being spent. It's arguing that the very structure of the budget's incentives, squeezing workers while increasing dependency, is what makes it so dangerous for the long-term health of the economy. And that leaves us with this final question, which is really the heart of the entire argument we've just explored. It's not just about one budget or one country, but about the fundamental role that incentives play in driving human behavior and, ultimately, the fate of an economy.